Hey everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do my reading wrap up for the month of November 2018. Now, November was a really good reading month. I read 8 books in total, comprising 8 different authors and 4 different genres. So it really was a very nice, varied month. Also varied in terms of quality because there were some extremely good books and some extremely dubious books, let's say. Anyway, let's get on to the first of those 8 books, which was a surprising book because I was sent this out of the blue by the publisher Garland, and that is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Now, this is classified as science fiction, but in particular, this is classified as young adult science fiction. Young adult is a age demographic group that has never worked for me. If you know me by now, you will know this because I've commented on it many times. I was honestly not expecting very good things from this because I just thought YA science fiction. I've tried to read them before, they almost never work. I generally think they are too simplistic and I just don't understand the characters as a whole. So I was very dubious about this and I was probably quite biased in a negative way about this. But I would like to say that I was rather mistaken with my bias towards this because actually this was much better than I gave it credit for when I received it, because it is, yes, the plot is simplistic and the characters interact in a fairly obvious way, and there is absolutely nothing whatsoever surprising about the plot at all. All the so-called plot twists in the book weren't plot twists, they were blatantly obvious from page 1. Every single event in this book, absolutely all of them, I was predicting accurately a very long time before they happened. It was obvious because the writing style, but likewise the writing style is what made this fun because it was just a strong, clear and clean writing style. The characters were, whilst yes they may have been sort of simplistic in their interactions from my point of view, they were also enjoyable in their interactions and there was some sarcasm and it felt quite natural the way the characters talked for the most part, which frankly I was overlooking when I had my initial sort of thoughts about this book prior to reading it. So I would highly recommend this actually, especially if you like obviously Brandon Sanderson, you'll already be reading it frankly, or be on your wish list. This is the first in a new trilogy by him. He is known for writing young adult fantasy. This is obviously science fiction, so it's a little bit different, and it's one that actually worked for me quite well. And in fact, I may actually probably be trying to get hold of the second and third books as and when they are released in the next few years. Knowing Sanderson, and he seems to be a bit of a writing machine, will probably be next year, 2019 and 2020, because he is very reliable in terms of producing content on time. So I'm quite eager to read the 2 sequels to this actually. The second book was Arslan by M.J. Engh, and yes, this is indeed one of the Yellow Spine SF Masterworks by Garland again. Now, I decided to read this on the spur of the moment at the very start of the month, purely because Rachel, known as Calinardi on BookTube, also happened to start reading this, and I thought, if I started reading this now, considering I'd heard that this has got some quite dark ideas in it, and quite complex ideas, I thought this might be a perfect time to read it, because that way, if I have any issues with it, I can talk to Rachel. Likewise, if she has any issues, she can ask me about them, and it might be useful. It wasn't a planned buddy read, and indeed it wasn't a buddy read, but it was just handy that I read it at the same time as Rachel, because I probably got more out of this than I otherwise would have done. Now, this is a book that I frankly didn't particularly like, however, though, because the content of it was frankly awful. And awful in the terms of the main character is a guy called General Arslan, and he is a strange guy because he's not American, and somehow he ends up in control of virtually every major military in the world, including the American military, and he starts ruling multiple countries and ends up sort of becoming like the world leader, the world leader in fact. And he's not a very nice character, despite the fact that the book and the writing seems to almost want to make you sympathise and almost like him, when he's actually a sociopath and a psychopath. He's a paedophile, he's a rapist, he's a truly horrific human being. This guy should be killed. at the start of the book, and he's not. And I mean, he's kind of like reading about a sort of Hitler type figure. He's really messed up in so many ways, almost funny. But although it's not funny because it's just nasty and grim. And the only reason that I continued reading this book was because it is actually quite thin, and it only took me about 3 hours to read it. Frankly, from start to finish, I was determined that I wanted to read this because I realised very quickly that this was a book that I could easily just say no and just call it a day and just DNF it, do not finish it. But I thought no, I'll just read it straight through, and I did because of the speed that I read it. It's straightforward, but I didn't enjoy the topics and the way that you're made to kind of want to sympathise with the character, although obviously that's not an option. I just found kind of unsettling, and I didn't like it. So honestly, I can't actually recommend this to anybody. I know Rachel said something very similar to this because the same thought, she really struggled with this, the same as I did. So honestly, I can't recommend it, frankly. Next up, I read Child of God by Cormac McCarthy. Now, I'm currently on a small Cormac McCarthy run. I actually own all 10 of his novels, and indeed I am planning to go through every single one of them in the next month or so. Child of God is actually one of the thinnest of his 10 novels, although none of his books are super long. This one is a strange one because this actually made me think of a kind of a horror suspense movie. The plotline is and could be used for that kind of movie because it is quite dark and quite simple but extremely well done and well executed. It's about this strange guy who lives in the sort of backwoods America many years ago, and he's strange. I'm not going to say too much because it is quite short, so I'll give away some pretty significant plot points which I'm glad I didn't know in advance because it would have spoiled the book for me. I did enjoy it, although I can't say I liked the experience though, because this character and what he does in the book is frankly not very nice at all. He's a very nasty character and highly disturbing. So it's this is probably not the best book to follow on from Arslan, because Arslan was also dark and brutal and grim, and this was not quite as bad actually, nowhere near, because with Arslan you've made you feel as though you want to sympathise with the character, which fails. With this, you're not made to sympathise with the character. This is just a strange, nasty person who, frankly, you don't want to do well. So it's straightforward and well written. McCarthy has a habit of doing rather strange things with punctuation and grammar. Frankly, he does his own thing with them, which some people might have an issue with, and frankly, even I do at times as well. But I did enjoy it overall, so I will be reading more by McCarthy. Next up is A Second Chance by Jodi Taylor. This is the third book in an ongoing series by her, the Chronicles of St. Mary's series. This is a series which is based on the idea of time travel. It is a sort of history group that has access to time travel, however. So rather than just going to do field work in foreign countries, they go to foreign field work in foreign countries at the time that the events happen, and they actually observe them first hand. However, essentially this is a case of everything that can go wrong will go wrong for them. They keep getting involved far more than they should and keep getting into trouble, and there are deaths in these books. Actually, I think every book has had at least one significant death. So how many characters will be left by the later books and what new characters will have to be introduced will be quite interesting, because she's not afraid of killing off or appearing to kill off significant characters, which is curious. And I can't say too much more because again, it's the third book in an ongoing series, but it's well written, it's funny, the story is grim at times but also light at times, and it's just very well done book, which I greatly enjoyed, and I will be continuing with the series without fail. The fifth book that I read was The Tropic of Serpents by Marie Brennan. This is the second book in a series of 5, the memoirs of Lady Trent. I am currently at this moment reading the third book as well, and indeed I do really enjoy these books. They are classed as fantasy, and they are rather unusual for fantasy, because despite the fact that obviously the whole idea and theme of the books is based around one woman, Lady Trent, Isabella, going off and being a dragon naturalist, investigating the science and the sort of understanding of dragons and how they fit and work in this world. It is not quite as dragon focused as what you might expect from that, however. Dragons make a relatively small appearance, and indeed a small effect on the overall plot. It's more about Isabella and her sort of scientific and studious mind than the dragons, which some people might have an issue with, frankly. And I've read reviews of this, and some people don't like the fact that there's not enough dragons in a book that is got the word dragons in the series title. But to me, this works well. This is an interesting one because in this, Lady Trent goes off to a jungle environment, sort of like a Borneo, Brazil type environment, and looks for swamp dragons essentially. And she has adventures, let's say there. It's her account. So but you get snippets of both the sort of older Lady Trent, as these are obviously her memoirs, but also it's mostly in accounts of her being happening then and there, which is an interesting style, one that I personally enjoy, but it's not for everybody. But I would recommend these books if you're looking for something a little bit different with a take on dragons. Next up is Europe in Autumn by Dave Hutchinson. Now this book is the first in a 4-book series. I am, like the previous book, in the middle of reading the second book in this series. I'm actually a little bit wary of saying anything about this book in case I accidentally spoil this book by mixing up the contents of this with the second book. However, the main character of this book is called Rudy. He's a cook in a Polish restaurant in Krakow, and he gets involved with essentially smuggling underground, people smuggling, document smuggling, whatever kind. It's not generally drugs, however, but virtually everything else other than that. And let's just say that's where the book starts. By the end of the book, however, it goes in a very unexpected direction, let's say, if you're not aware that the genre of this book is thriller, but it's also with a science fiction edge to it. And the science fiction edge to it is what brings in certain interesting twists and elements to the book. Where this goes with the second, third and fourth books, which I do now own, because as soon as I started reading this, I knew I was going to read the other books. I immediately bought them before I even finished this. It's extremely well written. I will probably do a 4-book series review of this once I've finished all 4 of them. Probably not that far off, because I'm planning to read through all of them in one continuous go now. But I really enjoyed this book. It was excellently written, cleverly written, brilliant ideas, good characters, strange plot lines, which I appreciate, and frankly this does everything right as far as I'm concerned, and it's an excellent book, really is. I enjoyed this. Is probably my favourite book of this whole month, in fact. The 7th and penultimate book was a reread for me, and that is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I read this 2 or 3 years ago now. I reread it because I do a monthly group read, and I have a Goodreads group to go along with that, where I read various award-winning science fiction books. This is indeed one of them, and I have to say that I'm not going to say too much about this book because I've talked about it before, and I think I've did a separate review of this book, I believe, once upon a time, many years ago, but I could be mistaken about that. But I know I talked about it quite heavily, and indeed the 2 sequels to this. But I didn't enjoy this book on the reread as much as I did on the first time around, which actually I'm not surprised about, because this book is about the rather surprise of the reading and the unusual writing style, because this is about atmosphere and the characters, for instance, who are in this area X, which is this weird environment that has turned up, but you've got this weird unknown barrier. You're not told exactly how the barrier between area X and the real world works exactly. You're just told that it's there in some way, and this area is expanding, and they want to go in and work out why it's expanding. The characters are not actually named, with individual names. They're just named by their professions, which is frankly really strange, and doesn't seem as it might work, but it actually does for the most part. Although some people have an issue with it, and I can well understand why. It does take away from the personal aspect of the book, but I did enjoy the book overall, just not as much this time as I did the first time, because the unknown factor of the book wasn't there this time, obviously, because I already do know what all the twists are, and obviously I've read the second and third books in what is a loose trilogy. It's not like a direct follow-on as such. It's more about this Area X and the strange world that it creates. Finally, the last book is Beyond Lies the Wub by Philip K. Dick. This is a science fiction short story collection. This is the first book in a series of 5, although this book has several other names. I think the most common name for this book, in fact, is The Short Happy Life of the Oxford Brown, which is indeed the name of one of the short stories in it. Now, I have read about, at this point, half of everything that Philip K. Dick wrote. He was known for writing quite a lot of books. He's a very active writer. However, most of his full-length novels, frankly, I haven't enjoyed. I've only enjoyed a few of them, relatively speaking. However, with this, most of the short stories in this I greatly enjoyed, and I thought were intelligently written, extremely funny for the most part actually. There's more humour in these short stories than almost any of his other full-length novels, in my opinion. His humour comes across in a more obvious way. It's there in his full-length novels, but with short fiction, his humour comes across more, and also his ideas come across more, because I think he has a habit, Philip K. Dick does, of losing his way with where his ideas want to go. He gets bogged down in writing weird elements into his stories, and he loses the ideas. Because these are short, he doesn't lose the ideas. The ideas are the whole thing. And I greatly enjoyed this, and frankly I am greatly looking forward to reading more by him. And for the record, I do have the other 4 short story collections in this 5 series collection, so I will be reading them in the following months, and indeed will be reading one in the next week or 2 as well. So I would highly recommend this. It might be a good place to start with Philip K. Dick as well, because it's a little bit more normal, these short stories are, than his full-length novels, which frankly can be a bit strange and bizarre at times and a bit hard to read. These are more closer to today's standards, let's say, which frankly could be a very good place to start. In fact, it really could. So with that said, that is it for all of the books that I've read in November. If you've read any of these or would like to, then please leave a comment and we can have a discussion about the books. Any links to anything I talked about, like the reviews or anything, I will link in the description box below as well as a link to Rachel, who I mentioned frankly on a very regular basis. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.